Well, welcome. Good morning. Welcome to our online pre-service for this weekend. My name is Brad, joined today by my wife, Mallory.
Hello.
How you doing today?
Good.
Normally she's at home with the kids, and
True.
Today she gets to join me.
Yeah.
So
You're with Grandma this morning.
yes.
So thank you, Grandma and Grandpa.
Yes, thank you all watching the kids this morning. Anyway, so in our service, we've got a lot of fun things planned. We are continuing in our It Runs in the Family teaching series. We're looking at what it means to be the church, what we are called to. Pastor Ben Powers is going to be preaching at our Mid-Rivers campus, and Chris Bance is going to be here for our online. He's our St. Charles campus pastor. So excited to hear what he has for us today as we look at what it means to encourage and what it looks like to encourage one another. I want to ask you a question. So as you guys are getting on, we'd love for you to just say hello, for you to say hello in the chat. We have a question we want to throw out to you that you can interact with a little bit. And it's something that we've been thinking about, talking about all summer. I don't know how many of these items we've actually crossed off, but
a couple.
what do you have left on your summer bucket list? So summer's winding down. Mallory, you're really the expert in this for our family.
True.
What do we have left?
So we have a 2 and 3-year-old at home, and so our summer bucket list mostly revolves around children and their activities and things that would be fun. So one of the things that we've wanted to do and haven't done yet while it's still warm outside, I heard of a place down on Main Street that does like custom make your own ice cream sandwiches and different cookies and different ice creams, and so I thought the kids would love that. So kind of make an evening of it, go to the river.
I would also love that.
You would also love it,
Yeah.
yes. Kind of make your own ice cream sandwiches. So
Cool.
yeah,
Awesome.
that's one.
Do you want to ask me?
Yeah, hey, what's something that you
So there's this
have
place
on
on
your
Main
bucket
Street
list?
that we haven't been yet. Does some custom ice cream. Anyway, my stuff. I'm taking James. So he's our soon-to-be 4-year-old. We're going to a baseball game down at Busch Stadium here in a couple weeks. So really excited about that. Just living it up while the Cardinals are still playing. So anyway, we'd love to hear from you. What is something that you still have yet to cross off your summer bucket list that you want to make sure that you do before the fall gets here? Weather this weekend has been so good, so beautiful.
So hot.
No, this weekend it was nice yesterday.
Well, it was all right.
Anyway, fall is coming, and we are excited about that here. If you are interested, we are looking for volunteers, for people to serve on our online chat. So this morning, Jacob Shuttle, he is on moderating, so make sure you say hello to him. But we want to get some volunteers. We want to get more interaction happening there, because church is not something that's meant to just be consumed. It's something that is meant to be participated in. It happens best in relationship. And so we'd love, if you have a heart to help people interact, if you love to just talk to people, if you're somebody who, when you come into the building and you can't get out of the building for like an hour after service because you're saying hi to people, if that's you, we'd love to have you serve once a month, just helping us make just a really welcoming community and experience for people as they log on. We're also looking for people to pray with others. So it was so sweet. Last week I was on the chat for 15-20 minutes after service just praying with people, and that's an awesome privilege and opportunity. If you have a heart to pray for others and you're interested, we would love for you just to reach out, send us a direct message, or indicate in the chat, or fill out the Connect card and say you would like to help with our online chat, and we will follow up with you. That being said, if you are watching for the first time, this is your first time joining, we would love to get to know you a little bit. You can fill out our Connect card on the website, calvary.church/connect, or text the word new to our church phone number, 636-939-4343. Also, if you're not new, but you just have a prayer request or you have a question, you can use that Connect card for that as well. So this past week, so we're in the series, It Runs in the Family, looking at what it means to be the church. This last week, JJ Bond and I sat down for a conversation on a book that we both recently read called A Church Called Tove. It was a gripping book. Would love for you to hear a little bit about our conversation.
Tove to one another. I think a lot of it has to do with what we've been talking about as we've walked through this series. Loving one another, honoring one another. I think bearing with one another. I think that's a big deal, that along with forgiving one another. I think all the things that we've covered in this one another series are marks of what a Tove culture looks like. And one of the things he talks about in the book, I think it's one of the first things, is empathy. And I think when I think of empathy and even how he defines it in the book is the ability to sit with others in their messiness, in their pain, with whatever's going on. Being able to be with them, not necessarily have the answer, not making any judgments, but really bearing with, walking with. I mean, I think a lot of the things that we've covered in this series, that's what I think about when I think of.
Anyway, you can find the rest of that video on our website, calvary.church / It Runs in the Family. You can also find it on our YouTube channel. While you're there, I invite you to subscribe as well so you don't miss any new content. But anyway, that book has just been really gripping. That's one of those, it comes from stories we've seen over the last several years, right? Lots of church failures, leadership failures, and it kind of leaves a tough taste in the mouth when it comes to church. And what they do, though, in the second half of the book is really paint a just beautiful portrait of what a church with a goodness culture. So the word tov in Hebrew it's the Hebrew word for good. You find it in Genesis chapter 1 when God is creating, and each day he says, and he saw that it was good. He saw that it was tov. And so the authors are really trying to say, hey, this is what a church culture should feel like and be like, a culture of goodness. And so anyway, you can find that resource, that conversation, in places we let you know earlier. And I think it'd be a great opportunity, just a great way for us to enter into some of those really tough conversations with grace and in a way that's winsome. Mallory.
Yes.
So every week I do this deep dive with members of our teaching team.
Yes.
Do you listen to it?
I try to listen to it. I know it's bad.
It's so gracious.
I really mean to listen to it, and I don't know.
I didn't tell her I was going to throw her under the bus there.
Nah,
anyway, every week we do a deep dive. Different members of our teaching team, we sit down to talk about the week's passage a little more in depth. Some weeks, if it's topical, we talk about the topic more. Some weeks, if we're looking at a particular passage, we just kind of really dive more into that passage.
Yeah.
And so it's a podcast now. So it's not just the video that we release every week. It's an audio podcast. You can find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can also find that on our resource page for It Runs in the Family, calvary.church / It Runs in the Family. So the A Church Called Tov, book recommendations, deep dive, and more, all of those can be found on our website each week. All right, so today we are, summer is starting to wind down. Fall is getting, it's coming close, which we
Thank
love.
goodness.
I know.
I'm from Michigan. I'm a northern girl, so I really, Brad will tell you, every day in the summer, literally, I complain that it's so hot. I just try and survive the summer to get to fall and winter.
Yes, if that's you, say so in the comments. Do you like summer or fall more? And if you like summer, other people tell them why they're wrong. So anyway, that's the fall is coming. We're pumped. We're excited. But with that being said, so what do we have left on our summer bucket list?
So I guess this wouldn't have to be summer, but it's something that we had talked about doing in the summer. But our 3-year-old has been asking for a while to go up in the arch. And so we had said, hey, while we're, off of our kind of normal rhythm in the summer, it'd be fun to take a day, go downtown. He's seen the outside of the arch, but never, gone up inside. Yeah. So that was kind of another
and he's watching this right now, probably. So we're gonna have that's accountability.
Yeah, we'll take you,
us.
James.
Yes.
We'll take you up in the arch.
Anyway, so one of we'd love to hear from you. Throw in the chat. What do you have left on this summer on your summer bucket list to do? This week, actually for the next, about another week or so we have left, we are doing a shoe drive here at Calvary. So one of the things is, and you'll hear in a video we have to play here in a minute, but kids in the schools, their feet grow, right? Like we're always buying new shoes for our kids.
Yes.
Their feet grow, but often their income, their family income doesn't allow for new shoes for the school year. And so we'd love to hear, for you to hear from Pastor Matt Miller. He's our community ministries pastor. Just kind of about his heart and how we can help contribute to this shoe drive.
Hello, my name is Matt Miller. I'm the community ministry pastor at Calvary Church. Last spring, I was doing inventory for all of the Neighbor Helping Neighbor sheds in the city of St. Charles School District. and had a chance to talk to some counselors as we inventoried the items there, which covers a lot of items. They mentioned to me that children's feet grow over the summer, but many times those same children do not have the opportunity to have a parent buy shoes for them. Wow, let's see what we can do through Neighbor Helping Neighbor to solve this problem for these children and to be a blessing to them and to their families. This effort is community-wide, not just Calvary. We have many, many partners in Neighbor Helping Neighbor Service Coalition, and it is an incredible collaboration of churches and agencies that come together to meet the needs of families that are in our community. And this is just one example of the community coming together to bless hurting families in our community. I am so blessed as a community ministry pastor at Calvary to have a congregation that always meets the needs. And your generosity is outstanding and has blessed many, many hurting families in our community. So go out, buy a pair of shoes, drop them off at Calvary Church Mid Rivers campus or St. Charles campus, or order them online and just have them shipped to Calvary Church.
I love Matt. I love his heart for our community. He has been so integral in the establishment and the continuation of Neighbor Helping Neighbor Service Coalition. That's an organization that partners a bunch of churches together, a bunch of different ministry organizations together to really make a difference in this community. And so, Shoe Drive, yes, you can go to our website, calvary.church/community. You can for a full list of what we're looking for and ways that you can participate in that. But it is really cool. You know, anytime I come into the building over the last couple of weeks, there's these boxes that are just filled with shoe boxes.
And you remember that feeling as a kid, right? Like going back to school, having that new pair of shoes, it just gave you kind of a confidence. And
as a kid, I get a new pair of shoes and I walk into work and I'm like,
It's true.
Anyway, so as you're out shopping, if you're at Target, you know, pick up a couple pair of shoes, you know, drop them off at either our St. Charles or Mid Rivers campuses, or the easiest way, right? Just order something online and just ship it directly to Calvary Mid Rivers. So our church address, Jacob will throw in the chat, but it's 3998 Mid Rivers Mall Drive, St. Peters, Missouri 63376. Jake will throw that in the chat. If you want to participate that way, we want to make it really easy, just to make a big difference in this community. All right, so service is about ready to start. Just in a couple minutes here, we're going to be getting into our service. We're looking, continuing our series called "It Runs in the Family," where we are asking the question: what should the church look like? Who are we called to be? What are we called to be known for? And like a family, there's certain traits that run in families. Height does not run in Mallory's.
Well, it does on one side.
On one side, you didn't get it though.
I did not.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Anyway, things run in certain families.
Yeah.
In the church, what runs in our family? And so today, Chris Bance, he's our St. Charles campus pastor. He is going to be preaching for online, and we're going to be looking at that idea of how can we be a church, how can we be a community, how can we be a family that encourages one another, that builds one another up, and why is encouragement not our default? Why is it difficult? And so in addition to that, we have resources. And so if you go to our website, calvary.church/itrunsinthe family, you can find resources that support this series. Our deep dive video, that's a video and a podcast that we do every week. Different members of our teaching team talk more about the passage. You can find that there. You can find book recommendations. You can find a little bit ago in pre-service, we played a video excerpt from our a conversation that JJ and I had this past week about a book that we recently read. So those resources and more on our website, calvary.church/itrunsinthe family. We're going to be singing some songs together. We're going to, just lots happening today. We're excited for service, excited for you to join us. And as you are jumping on, we'd love for you to just say hello in the chat. Jacob Shuttle is moderating there today. Say hello and answer this question. What do you have left on your summer bucket list? So Mallory, what do we got?
So this one we actually haven't talked about yet, but it's something that I've had on my mind for a summer bucket list. And that is to have a summer sleepover with our kids. We've got a 2 and a 3-year-old at home, and we did this in the winter at Christmas time.
Yeah, it was awesome.
We put the Grinch, had a fire, did the Christmas tree, popcorn,
our kids,
hot
they'll
chocolate.
probably still ask to watch the Grinch.
Probably.
Yeah.
But in the summer, we could do a summer version with Cardinal baseball and just all kind of camp out in the living room. So, what about you? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I've got, so the summer bucket list that I have is maybe a little different than the rest of my family. Mine are like, what outdoor projects do I need to get finished still before
I could give you
cold?
about 30 for your bucket list on that one.
Yes. So anyway, we'd love to hear from you. What do you have left on your summer bucket list to do as the summer winds down, as we get closer to the fall? And as we get closer to the fall, we have a lot of ministries that are getting ready to get going, one of which is our small group ministry. And so if you're interested in joining an online small group, so a virtual small group, we would love for you to fill out our Connect card and indicate so, or you can go to our website, calvary.church/small groups, and just click the online button. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're looking for. But I know that, especially in the last year and a half, we are so isolated from one another, and yet we still have the opportunity to connect in ways we've never done in the past. And so if you're interested in joining an online small group, we would love to help you get connected. All right, service is about ready to start. I'm going to run into the worship center here in a minute and do some welcome, do some announcement.
Run.
I mean, literally, well, maybe not. I timed it a little bit ago, so we'll see. But anyway, we're really excited to worship together. And so wherever you are, whomever you're with today, we have the opportunity to come as the family of God to worship and proclaim the name of Jesus. So thank you for being with us. Make sure you say hello, and we are excited to worship.
And we believe that happens best in the context of relationship. And so as we get started this morning, there's a couple things that I want to put on our radar to help us to that end. The first are our small groups. As the summer winds down, the fall gets started, it's a great opportunity. We have groups that are starting, we have groups that are restarting. And so if you are interested in joining a small group, whether you're a student, right, our student ministry stuff is happening, starting back up tonight, small groups for grades 6 through 12. If you're a single, if you're a couple, if you're older, if you're younger, we have small groups for anyone at any stage of life, and we would love to help you get connected to a group. Just go to our website, calvary.church/small groups, to sign up or to just express interest in that, or text the word groups to our church phone number 636-939-4343, and a member of our team will follow up with you this week. The other opportunity we have to connect is happening in 2 weeks. We are going to be having a tailgate. So Sunday, August 29th, we want to just transform our parking lot to a space where we can enjoy community together. So we're hoping that you go to our website, calvary.church/midriver, scroll down to the bottom, click on the tailgate icon. You can reserve your spot, but we want to see groups out there. We want to see ministries out there. We want to see families out there in your cars, with your trucks, with your pop-up tents and your lawn games. We just want to create an environment that is welcoming and that is fun, where we can enjoy the relationships that we have with one another. So that's happening in 2 weeks. On Saturday that weekend, we aren't tailgating, but we will have Raising Cane's. So if you want to double dip and, come and get the chicken on Saturday and then come back for the lawn games on Sunday, totally cool. Anyway, we're so excited for those two things. We're going to worship now. We're going to worship both through the giving of our tithes and our offerings and through song and music. And as we do this, I just want to start by reading from Psalm 34 today. It says this. It says, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. Let's do that right now.
There's just something about it, fills my heart with joy. There's just something about his name. Only one that I worship, only one I adore, only one my heart will praise. There's just something about his name. Jesus, lift up Jesus, sing the name that overcomes. Savior, he has freed us. Lift up Jesus, lift him up. Sings a river of mercy. He's a river of mercy. He's the fountain of life. All my sins are washed away. Thank you, God. He's the reason I'm singing. He's my song in the night. He's been faithful all my days. There's just something about his name. Jesus, lift up Jesus, sing the name that overcomes. Savior, he has freed us. Lift up Jesus, lift him up. Holy, holy, the whole earth is filled with his glory. Holy, holy, worthy of praise. Holy, holy, all the saints are singing his glory. Holy, holy, no other name. Holy, holy, whole earth is filled with his glory. Holy, holy, worthy of praise. Holy, holy, all the saints are singing his glory. Holy, holy, no other name. Jesus, lift up, sing the name overcome. Savior, he has freed us. Lift up Jesus, lift him up. Jesus, lift up Jesus, sing the name that overcomes. The Savior, oh Savior, he has freed us. Lift up Jesus, lift him You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. been chosen from my mother's womb. You have chosen me. Your love has called my name, and I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Yes, I am. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I think one of the greatest encouragements that we can receive today is that truth right there, that you are a child of the one true King. The fact that he has called you his own gives purpose to your life. It gives purpose to living a sacrificial life of worship today. Let's just sing of the evidence of his goodness in our lives today. Come on. You split the sea so I can walk right through. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. Sing that again. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. Oh, I am a child of God. Yes, I am a child of God. Oh, I am a child of God. Let's say that I am a child of God. Yes, I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You reach from the sky, leaving heaven's throne. I was meant to die, and you wouldn't let me go. The riches of your grace I could not hold. My guilt has been erased. Now I'm forever whole. Oh, what a price you paid, trading the high all you are. For all you are and all you've done, we lift you up, lift you up. For all you are and all you've done, we lift you up. Come on, sing it up. For all you are and all you've done, we lift you up. For all you are and all you've done, we lift you up, lift you up. For all you are and all you've done, we lift you up, lift you up. For all you are and all you've done, we lift you up. Oh, what a price trading the lay down your crown for how great a king. Oh, what a life you gave up everything that you would die for. How great a king. Oh, how you paid, trading the highest place. You laid down your crown for me. How great a king. Oh, what a life you gave. You gave up everything that you would die for me. How great a king. So God, today we're grateful that you would give everything up for us. And in the same way, we pray, God, that we would have the confidence to lay down our lives before you, to surrender, to live in humility. And as we're called to live a sacrificial life of worship. Lord, thank you for time to be with the church, to sing praises to the one who's worthy. We commit our hearts to you today. We love you. We're grateful. Pray this in Jesus' precious and holy name. Amen. Amen. Why don't you go ahead and take a seat?
Well, thank you, Caleb and the team, for leading us in worship today. We live in a story. And in this story, Jesus Christ, he is King of the cosmos. He is sitting at the right hand of the Father. And today, as we continue in our series, It Runs in the Family, we're looking at what it means to encourage one another. And I think the greatest encouragement is just to remind ourselves of the truth that we live in that story and that Jesus reigns. Pastor Chris Bantz from our St. Charles campus is going to be preaching today for us for our online service, and so excited for you to hear from him. But right before we get to him, I just want to let you know you can follow along on our app. Just click the follow along tab, or if you're watching on our website, you can pull the notes up and then follow along with his message there. So anyway, excited for you and for us to hear from Pastor Chris right now.
Hey Calvary, my name is Chris and I bring you greetings from the church at St. Charles campus and all the saints gathered there. And I'm really excited for us to spend some time in the Bible today and look at God's Word and see what He has for us. And I want to kick us off with a question just to kind of get our brains thinking on this. And it is this: how many of us live orthodox lives but are also living exhausted life? How many of us live lives that are orthodox but exhausted. And here's what I mean by that: that we have the right beliefs, we have the right theology, we've got the right categories, and yet we feel like our prayer life is a bit stale. We feel like going to church or attending our small group is a bit of a chore. We feel like serving in the church and serving in our neighborhood and serving our community is a bit exhausting and draining. Now, if you're a follower of Jesus, odds are you've experienced a season like this, you're already in a season like this, or you will yet to be in a season like this. And as Roy Ortland points out, oftentimes this happens when our churches have gospel doctrines, which are important, right belief is important, but they don't have gospel culture. It's something that is known, but it is something that is not felt. And in this series, it runs in the family which we've been in for the last 4 or 5 weeks now. It's all about how do we as a local church not just have gospel doctrines, but also have a gospel culture. How do we not only believe the right things, but how do we also feel and experience and live out and embody the right things? How do we experience the beauty of the gospel in the best that human relationships and church relationships have to offer? So to answer this question, we've been walking through the one another statements, right? Like encourage one another, love one another, forgive one another, bear with one another, love one another. And today we're going to be really honing in and focusing on the topic of encouraging one another. And I think this is a huge one because I think a huge cure for our spiritual burnout and exhaustion is to have people in our corner, people who we trust, confidants, if you will, who are spiritually encouraging us in life over the long haul, and vice versa, people that we are speaking into and pouring into and encouraging as well. We need people who affirm us in our giftings. We need people who are present with us in times of difficulty. We need to celebrate people who celebrate the way God is using us to make a difference. We need people who help hold us accountable in our calling in the way that God has wired us. And so we need these people to encourage us. And I think this will be a huge step into what it means to not just have right belief, orthodoxy, but also to have a right feeling, a right experience, a right embodiment, a gospel culture in our church, in our community, and in our families. And I think this has been really easily seen in this last Olympic cycle, right? So the Tokyo Olympics, they just got over. I love the Olympics. I watch as much as I possibly could. But one of the biggest stories that actually came out of the Olympics is that several of the athletes were wrestling with their mental health. Simone Biles being maybe the most famous example, but this was actually pretty widespread and not just in the U.S. camp. This happened with several countries at the Olympic Games. And I wonder, maybe it was in such a spotlight this time around because they didn't have their spouses there with them. They didn't have their families there with them. They didn't have their parents there with them. Like, because of the travel restrictions, a lot of these athletes felt super isolated. They didn't have their normal team of encouragers. They didn't have their normal team of people there for them when things got tough, or when they're on the mountaintop, or when they're on the medal podium, right? And so I think when you read these articles written by sports psychologists and people that were there, a lot of them will say, hey, these athletes, they were really missing and lacking this encouraging support system. And it's a huge part of why this Olympic Games, along with all Olympic Games, there's always massive pressure, was sometimes tough mentally for athletes at the Games. And so I think it just indicates that we need people in our corner. We need to be in others' corners. As a church community, we're called to encourage one another. The encourage literally means to give courage, to spur on and courage. And we need those people in our lives. So here's where we're going to go today. We're going to go first, we're going to look at the great example of encouragement that takes place between Paul in the Thessalonians, and how encouragement is actually deeper and more meaningful than just compliment. I think sometimes we get those a little bit confused. Is encouragement just compliment? Well, it can be compliment, but it's also much deeper, and we're going to see that how Paul writes to Thessalonians. Second, we're going to lean into the wisdom of James and look how powerful our words are and how powerful our encouragement can be. And so James has a ton of practical wisdom for us, and how do we control our mouths and our tongues? How do we control our speech in a way that is life-giving, life-altering, life-changing, life-transforming, instead of words that would maybe not give life or tear down or not build up. And hopefully through these two things, we can come to a place of understanding and embrace our big idea for today, which is this. God gives us the gift of encouragement and the church, two gifts, encouragement and the church, so that we can have hope on our worst days, affirmation on our best days, and inspiration in every day in between. Hope on our worst days, affirmation on our best days, and inspiration every day in between. And so we're going to start in 1 Thessalonians, and we're going to dig into a passage where Paul is writing to the church at Thessalonica, encouraging them in a season of their grief. And I want to give us a little bit of context before we dive into this passage, because context is king. Context is king. Now, there's a controversy in Thessalonica that is happening to those who have died before the second coming of Christ. And here's why this is happening. The majority of the early church thinks that Christ will come back in their lifetime. And many of the Greeks, and even some of the Jews, the Sadducees are a great example, do not believe in resurrection from the dead. Do not believe in any form of bodily resurrection from the dead. So once you're dead, there is little to no hope. And so now the Thessalonians have this new fear of what happens to those of us who have died before the second coming of Christ. Is there hope for them? And this isn't theoretical. It's not ivory tower theology. It's, am I going to see my grandpa and grandma again? Am I going to see my aunts again? Am I going to see my sibling again? Like, these are the things that the Thessalonians are grieving. So in this passage, Paul is writing to the Thessalonians to address two things. One, the head. They have an incomplete and uninformed theology. They've imported some Greek thought into what they think about the afterlife. And in this, they're having a hard time having hope for those who have passed away. He's also going to address the heart. They're grieving the loss of their loved ones. So we're going to see that Paul is really pastoral. He's stepping into this space with kindness, with charity, with grace, with a warm embrace. We need to remind ourselves over and over again, Paul is a pastor and a shepherd every bit as much as he is a theologian, and he's going to come to these people in their time of need. So with that context set, with the foundation set, let's dig in. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, it reads like this. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. I want to pause real quick right there after verse 14. Paul uses the term, those who have fallen asleep. This is just an analogy or a way of saying those who have died. Verse 15, for this we declare to you by a word from the Lord, that we who are alive, we who are left until the coming of the Lord, will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will always be with the Lord. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. So what we see is Paul's offering an encouragement based on his readers' reality. He knows the state of grief and mourning and lament that they are in. They've experienced death within the church community, and the big question looms over their head: what happens to these people because they have died before the second coming of Jesus? And so notice what Paul does. He doesn't offer a cheap one-liner. He doesn't offer, well, just get over it, you'll be okay. Maybe some of you, like myself, have experienced a moment where you're at a funeral and someone really well-meaning just says, well, it's sad, but they're in a better place now. And it's not necessarily that that's not true. It very well may be true. And yet in that moment, that doesn't feel like the genuine move. That doesn't feel like the thing we need. Like, we just need to be sad and lament and mourn. Because in that moment, we're grieving the loss of someone. We don't want the cheap one-liner. We see this in the book of Job, right? In the book of Job, in the Old Testament, Job has nearly everything but his life taken from him, and his friends come over to console him. Now, at first, Job's friends do a phenomenal job. They sit in sack and ash and the cloth that would have been typical for that culture, and so it was a sign of them mourning. But then it goes all wrong because they open their mouths and they say something. And that's where the friends of Job's go wrong. They try to offer theological answers and cheap one-liners to console Job, when really they just needed to sit there and be there with Job and help him in his lament and his mourning. So, Paul's not offering a cheap one-liner. He's entering into the real reality of they have lost loved ones. Now, Paul's encouragement, I want to point out, has substance, and it's also specific. He knows that for them to find hope in this moment, they need to grow in their understanding of the resurrection. In verse 13, he says, "We do not want you to be uninformed." Now, he says we because, right, he's kind of writing on behalf of him and Silas and Timothy, but it's from Paul's hand. But he's saying, we do not want you to be uninformed. You need to grow in your understanding of the resurrection. And when you do grow in your understanding of the resurrection, it's going to help you. It's going to be a warm blanket. It's going to console your soul in these times of grief. Now, I think this is a good application for us, just as the church, as Christians, is that specific encouragement goes a long way, right? Like, we all get a lot of generic encouragement of, you're doing a great job, good work, way to go. Like, it's been preached and spoken to us from a very early age. Like, you can be anything, you can do anything, as if talent and opportunity were equally distributed, which we know is not true. And so we've always been kind of washed over with these kind of cheap platitudes of, good job, you're great, you're going to be great, do whatever you want. And so we've just had enough of those. We need to be specific. I think the more micro we can be in our encouragement, the more powerful it is. Because when we're more micro in our encouragement, it says, I've seen your work. Specifically, I've noticed you. You are seen, you are known, keep it up. And so I think this is a good thing we can learn from Paul, is be specific in our encouragement. Don't just give something that's going to gloss over whoever's listening to us, but actually give something meaningful. It's a lot more meaningful than something generic. I give you an example of this. I could say to my wife, Haley, I could say, you're pretty and I love spending time with you. Well, those things are true, but it's a lot more powerful for me to be specific in the ways in which I love spending time with her, the conversations we have, the ways in which she is beautiful. I can talk about her blue eyes. Like, the specific in the micro will always have more meaning. Now, what Paul offers the Thessalonians in his specificity is a basic outline of the second coming of Christ. And here's what he gives them. He says, Jesus is going to return with some kind of announcement, a cry of command, a voice of an archangel, and the sound of a trumpet. Then he says, the followers of Jesus who have died will experience bodily resurrection. So you guys don't have to worry about those who have passed in your midst, those who are asleep before the second coming. 3, he says, those who are alive during the second coming will join Jesus and those who have been resurrected. And then 4, we will dwell in the presence of Jesus for eternity. Now, it's good to remind us that this is Paul's very first letter, so he's not trying to offer a 1,000-page systematic theology. He's a pastor. He's a shepherd. In this sense, in many ways in this letter, he's a counselor. He's caring for their souls. And so he just gives a real basic 4-part, Jesus is coming back, the dead will rise, we will join the dead who rise and Jesus, and we will dwell in his presence for eternity. Paul's main aim is not to predict the details of the end times. His aim is to encourage. He's an encourager. That those who have lost loved ones and friends and family will be reunited with them someday. The words of Paul in this passage are less for theological debate in lecture halls, and they're much more for things like the first anniversary or the first birthday or the first holiday after their loved ones have passed. Now, before we move on from Thessalonians, I do want to mention one more thing, because whether you're a believer or not, and you're listening to this, there's a very odd verse in this passage, and it's 17. We will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. So this is kind of a dramatic scene. It may sound a little bit weird to you that we're going to be caught up in the clouds, in the air, that we're going to be like ascending. And the question is, okay, what does that actually look like? Well, Dr. David Chapman, he's a New Testament professor and scholar at Covenant Seminary, and he does a really good job of pointing out that the Greek word for meet, which is apantesis, is found only 2 other times in the New Testament. It's found in the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25 when they go out to meet the bridegroom. And it's mentioned in Acts 28 when Roman Christians come out of the city to meet Paul. Now, what do these other 2 uses of the word have in common? Well, they go out to meet the guest of honor only to immediately return to the place in which they came from. So they go out to greet and they go back into the city to where they came from. So the picture we get in 1 Thessalonians 4 is less of a rapture in which we all disappear instantly or fly away, or we're leaving the location of the world behind, never to return again. And God is just kind of taking the earth and kind of putting it in the waste bin. A more accurate picture is actually us being able to greet Jesus at his return. Then shortly after that, Jesus is going to judge the world. He's going to bring perfect restoration to his creation. Jesus' second coming, it's not going to stop midair. He's coming back for his creation. God doesn't junk the stuff he's created. Even when it's marred and touched by sin, he always comes back to redeem and to restore and to renew. And so it's a beautiful picture that we actually get with kind of an odd verse in 1 Thessalonians. Now, let's move on to James. This will be our last passage for our time together. In James 3, 1 through 12 is going to offer us some great practical wisdom, and it says this: Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire! And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among by our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird and reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and curse. My brothers, these things ought not to be. Does the spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. Now, here's what James is doing. He is making an argument that although the tongue is a small part of our body, it is incredibly powerful. Why? It makes our thoughts and feelings known about ourselves, about others, about our theology, about our worldview, about the way we're feeling, the emotions we feel in the circumstances and situations of our life. Our tongue is a small part of the body as far as mass goes, but it's actually a huge part. It's very powerful. And I like his last illustration of the forest fire, because we're experiencing that right now, right? Like in the western part of the United States, they are increasingly experiencing more and more forest fires every year. And a lot of this is because Smokey the Bear, right? Like we didn't allow forest fires for 30 years, and now we've got way too much built up, and it's catching on fire. But here's the interesting thing, is that only 10% of these forest fires are started by lightning or lava. So very dramatic events that are huge, powerful, dynamic events. 90% of these forest fires are caused by just someone not putting out their fire properly. Like it's small inbursts with a little bit of wind and a little bit of dry grass that can burn millions of acres. And this is true of our mouths, the words we speak. Small part of our body, but incredibly powerful. And this directly applies to how we encourage people. Like our words can build up, they can bring life, they can inspire, and they can also tear down. Or the lack of words, silence, can often speak volumes. So our words are going to account for 90% of encouragement or lack thereof in our lives. And I get it. There's other ways to encourage, right? People have different love language. There's time spent, there's gifts, there's all these other things that may be possible to encourage people. But I think 90% of the time it's going to be our words. This is the most common thing we're going to use. And like James says, we want our words to be a spring of fresh water. We don't want it to be a spring of salt water, which gives no life, cannot go forth and nourish and replenish anyone. We want springs of fresh waters to be our mouths in encouragement. And we're going to have to be really intentional about this, because if we're completely honest, right, like we like talking about ourselves, we like thinking about ourselves, we get caught up in the busyness and the whirlwind of our lives. And so it's actually going to take us intentionally looking outside of ourselves to the people around us, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and saying, okay, I'm going to go out of my way to use this spring of fresh water to encourage them. Now, IKEA did an interesting experiment a couple years back. And I say experiment loosely because we're not entirely sure how scientifically founded this is, but I do want to share it. And what they did is they took 2 houseplants and they put them in a classroom environment. And what they did is they had elementary students in this classroom environment speak different things to these 2 different plants. So they had the same soil, they had the same air, they had the same nutrition, they had the same water source, they had everything the same light, like it was a controlled environment. But to one plant, they had a speaker in its environment, and the children would speak good things, encouragement to this plant. They'd say, way to go, good job. They'd pay it compliments. They'd talk about how great the plant is. They'd hype it up. They were a hype man for this plant. Now the other plant, they would bully, basically. They would say negative things, which is a little bit funny if you think about it, like 2nd and 3rd graders bullying a plant. It's a little bit of an odd scene. But they bullied this plant, and after 30 days, whether coincidence or not, I don't know, but what they found is that the plant that was bullied withered. It wilted. It just totally failed. And the plant that was spoken encouragement to thrived. It blossomed. It flourished. And so you guys already know where I'm going with this. Like, our words are life-giving or life-sucking. They make a difference in the people who we are around, whether it's the people put over us, our authorities, our bosses, people who we have high respect for, or it's people that we need to have more respect for. Maybe the people that report to us, the people that are doing ordinary, important tasks in everyday life that we often overlook. And so I want to circle back to our big idea as we close. God gives us the gift of encouragement and the church so that we have hope on our worst days. We see this with Paul and the Thessalonians. On their worst day, when their loved ones are passing away, Paul is pastor, shepherd, counselor to them. He's giving them hope of the resurrection. Not to delegitimize their pain. It's not going to take away their tears in the present, but it gives them something to hold on to with their grief. It gives them hope to hold on to. Affirmation on our best days. Think about this. Who can you be a hype man or woman for? Who in your life do you think could just use that bit of encouragement? Maybe they're in a tough season, or maybe they're in a season where things are actually going pretty well, and you see God working and blessing them and flourishing. It's an easier season. Affirm them in that season. In the other season, encourage them. Give them hope. It's tough sledding right now. Either way, there's a word for every season. We've just got to be wise and discern and pray about the words we're using. And the third thing, an inspiration every day in between. Inspiration every day in between. As followers of Jesus, we want to live inspired lives, to love God, love people, to make disciples of all nations, like these core tenets of our faith. We don't just want the orthodoxy, right? We want the gospel culture, not just the gospel doctrine. We want to live and experience and breathe this. And so this is the final story. I had a coach at CMU, Central Methodist. I was an athlete there. I played baseball for 2 years, and then I had an injury that ended my baseball career. And going into my third year, I just had the competitive itch that I had to scratch. And so I walked into the offices of the track coach, and I said, I'd love to walk on the track team. I don't expect a dime. I know I'm brand new at this. Will you just give me a chance? And our first interaction was hilarious. The coach looked at me. He said, "You're a bit top heavy. You'll have to lose some weight, but you're not the most unathletic person I've seen." And I said, "Okay, we'll start with that." But what happened from there on out is this coach was in my corner encouraging me every step of the way. On the days that were brutally tough, he was there with me, running with me on my cool down runs. On the days in which I had success at the meet, he was there affirming the ways in which he'd seen my growth. And he was there to inspire me every day in between. But here's the beautiful thing about the end of this story, is that I think we can all relate and own that we love to be around encouragers. Encouragers are infectious to be around. They are often the lifeblood of our experience of the gospel. So after that season ended, I only had a semester left. I knew I wasn't going to come back to run another season. But I had a friend who was also a former baseball player who thought about track. And he was even more athletic and way more talented than me. And I said, you know what? This coach was in my corner every single day for the last year. You would love to have him as a coach. And so I set up the meeting, I made the connection, and he joined the track team. The following year, he was a national champion. So the best thing I ever contributed to the team was making the introduction. It was actually no race I ran. But I share that to say, we want to be around people who are encouragers, and we should want to be encouragers. And so as we just kind of wrap up our time in the Word, as we transition to a time of prayer, let's think about, who is God calling us to encourage? Who do we need to surround ourselves with that can encourage us? And what are the gospel doctrines and the gospel experiences that we need to saturate ourselves in to have hope on our worst days, affirmation on our best days, and inspiration every day in between?
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me with grace unseen. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes, I am. Oh, you say I'm chosen, Jesus. You call me love. Yes.
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am.
Sing it out in freedom. Chosen.
Forsaken.
Oh,
I am who you say I am.
you say I am.
You are for me,
Not against me.
I am who you say I am.
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say
thank you, Caleb and the band, Chris, for preaching today. I just want to pray real quick for us. Lord, thank you for the opportunity it is to gather and to be together, to sing, to learn. Lord, as Chris preached today from 1 Thessalonians, from James, just a reminder that our words matter. Our words matter a great deal. And they matter because you've created us to matter. You've created us in relationship to help others grow, to help others be inspired and affirmed. And Lord, oftentimes I think we need to preach those words of encouragement to ourselves too. And so would you just go with us today? Would you be with us? Would you encourage our hearts and our minds? Would you use us to encourage others? Would you put people, help them come to mind? If there's somebody that we can be a hype man for or champion, Lord, would you just work in us? And Lord, thank you for Jesus. Thank you for what he has done on the cross. It's because of the cross. It's because of what you do towards us and for us that we even can be an encouragement to others. And so, Lord, as we go this week, would we be an encouragement? Would you help us as we go? And we pray this in your name. Amen.
Well, thank you for joining us today. It was great, as Brad said, to be together, even virtually, worship together, learn together. And one of the things, that we like to do as a community is be able to pray together. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a prayer request, you have something in your life that you would like us and the community to pray for, you can either put it in the chat, or there's also a request prayer button there as well, and you can submit prayer that way. But we'd love to be able to pray with you.
Mm-hmm, for sure. We want to be a community that is connecting and engaging with one another, not just on Sundays, but throughout the week. And so we invite you to follow us on social media at Calvary Online, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. We want to connect with you throughout the week. And throughout the week, we have different resources that we do post and put there. And so if you go to our website, calvary.church/itrunsinthe family, you can find deep dive videos and more as well. And it's just been great. It's been really good being together today. We just ask you, just go in grace and peace. We look forward to connecting with you again next weekend.